All right, let's talk about Texas A&M, Drew. They're ranked inside the top 10, number 9 right now. They have 21 commitments. Headliners, DJ Sanders, who we'll see at the All-American Bowl, Rashad Johnson from the Sunshine State, Keoti Armstrong, Kelshawn Johnson, Marco Jones. You can kind of go down the list here. A little bit of a different flavor than what we saw under Jimbo Fisher. Where do you have them?
I have them written down overachieving, and that's going to sound odd given that Texas A&M back in 2022 signed one of the highest ranked recruiting classes ever. I think it still holds the highest total on the 24/7 Sports Composite team rankings. I mean, Coop, when Mike Elko was hired, I think to the college football media and everyone, he wasn't viewed as this elite recruiter. And me and you kind of raised our hands and said, no, okay, at the top of the board, it might not be a bunch of 5-star prospects, but the back end of that class is where they're really going to make their money. And I think that has proven to be true. I think what's also notable about Texas A&M and where they are ranked, Elko steps into the Lone Star State where Steve Sarkisian just took the Longhorns to the college football playoff. He has things ripping and roaring on the recruiting front. And Texas A&M, this recruiting class, it has 15 in-state commits, right? Now, how many head-to-head battles have they won against Texas? A handful, not a ton. But I still think Mike Elko is kind of out kicking his coverage here. I thought it would take a little bit longer, but I really like what they've done. They've also gone into California, and I know they've lost Hassan Longstreet, the quarterback, but they got 3 other kids committed from there. And there's still some 5-stars in play. Lamont Rogers, the offensive tackle, committed to Missouri, who he's been linked to Texas A&M. Mike Roach at 24/7 Sports has his crystal ball on the Aggies. There's some smoke out there about Dijon Lee, the 5-star corner committed to Alabama. So I think they've done a good job. And Coop, they also got some pelts on the wall. Hey, Rashad Johnson, safety out of the Sunshine State. That was a kid committed to Georgia. Georgia, Kirby Smart, they wanted that, big, rangy back 7 defender. Texas A&M is able to flip him. So I think it's very encouraging. And I think the class is better than I would have thought, if you had asked me 7-8 months ago.
Yeah, I have them on schedule because I think you and I have always talked about the potential of Texas A&M. I think the frustrating part, even as a national recruiting analyst, watching them, observing them over the last couple of years, Drew, what was it, 22, when they had the highest ranked class of all time? It was kind of hard to say at the time, but you see all this talent that they bring in, and then in the back of your head, you're like, yeah, it's an immense amount of talent, but do these guys really kind of fit the identity of who Texas A&M is trying to be, which led to the question, does Texas A&M even know who they're trying to be? All that is answered under Mike Elko. Mike Elko has an identity, what they want to do from a talent acquisition standpoint. And Drew, I couldn't be any more impressed. I keep bringing up that we're going through these cross checks right now, and Texas A&M was a team that I watched last night. And the majority of the time that I'm spending is on guys outside of the top 247. We can spend a lot of time on the Kelshawn Johnsons of the world. We can spend a lot of time on Keoti Armstrong and Marco Jones and how much we like those guys. But you go down the list, man, Tristan Norman, a guy from Alabama that I really like, a guy that's got developmental upside, going to be a number 3 receiver. I thought that was a savvy get. You look at their offensive line, Jonte Newman, Marcus Garcia, Tyler Thomas, Nelson McGuire was a late bloomer, Connor Carty. All these guys from the state of Texas, position versatility, can play tackle, can move inside the guard, Drew. We talk about that position flex and why that's so valuable defensively. This kid, Chase Sims, quite honestly, I think he's got top 150 talent. We stumbled upon him late here, and I'm glad we do this exercise. But they have done some phenomenal evaluations in the state of Texas, outside of the state of Texas. Jamar Beal Goins from Arizona as well, Drew. Dejon Petaway, another guy. Like, if even the guys that you're poking holes in a little bit, like a guy like Petaway, yeah, maybe he's a little bit slight, but one of the most athletic players on the back end in the entire cycle. They just miss smart. All those things that we talked about. All right, what are you going to do with the back end? You look at A&M, a Landon Rink. What's he going to look like on Sundays? I don't know. Going to be a guy that's probably going to be an eventual starter on Saturday, going to give you a lot of depth there as well. A guy that was on your freaks list. Drew, you go down the list, and I guess the point that I'm trying to make is everything makes sense. You understand what they're doing with every single take, maybe outside of 1 or 2 guys. And objectively looking at that, to me, all that really tells me is it's going to be a team not only with the top tier talent, But if they play their cards right, which they have done, and geographically, this is important. This is going to be a team with a lot of depth here in the next 2 to 3 years.
Hey, not to get like super sidetracked from the conversation and what we're talking about here. One of my favorite parts of these class audits is when you kind of go through and you watch all the kids back to back to back, is identifying the individuals that you know are just going to be or potentially faces of the program. Like you mentioned, Landon Rink, weight room warrior. Like that's a guy to me that we're going to see 2, 3 years down the line, face paint, standing there screaming on the sidelines. You can just kind of identify it. And I always love to put that in my notes. Like this guy's going to be a media favorite. This guy's going to be a voice in the locker room. This guy's going to be, kind of the heart and soul of the program. And I do think that's important, right? You need to have some of those individuals. And if we can identify it on tape, certainly I would think the people on the coaching staff and inside the recruiting department as well, you have to get some of those individuals, especially in this player movement era.